Let us begin by doing what we were already doing, breathing. There's no need to micromanage the breath, just simply becoming aware. And as we breathe, this breath affords us the opportunity to realize that if any of us had to breathe ourselves, to command our lungs to expand or contract, to command the oxygenated blood to circulate through our bodies, to differentiate between oxygen coming in and carbon dioxide going out. If any of us had to consciously engage in that practice, we would not be able to do anything else. So the fact that this happens automatically is indication of the power and presence of that which is the universe incarnating in, through, and as each and every one of us. This breath is the universe breathing itself as each one of us. And this simple act of respiration and the circulation of air, breath, chemicals, atmosphere that give this body the nutrients it needs to function. The blood that circulates through the circulatory system happens simply. The electrical impulses through our nervous system happen simply. When Tamara was introducing and welcoming, there was no need to, okay, lungs, okay, larynx, okay, tongue, okay, lips. I need you all to cooperate so that this thing called words can happen. As soon as Tamara's mind knew what she desired to say, it simply happened. And all of this is a demonstration that this thing called life is simple. Life simply happens. And what I mean by that is there is only one life, and that life is God. And that life is powerful and loving, nurturing, supportive, creative, and so much more. And that life is each life now. It is my life now. It is Larry's life now. It is Kristen's life now. It is Renee's life now. It is all of life now. Simply. And so this is a reminder that that which is God is simple. We overcomplicate God. We overcomplicate life. We overcomplicate. The moment I believe there is an other who is different and worthy of judgment, worthy of criticism, worthy of abandonment, worthy of punishment. The moment I do that, I am out of alignment, out of integrity with the truth of what God is, with the truth of what Spirit is, with the truth of what this thing called life is. So we breathe and remember and reflect that Meister Eckhart said, between me and God, there is no between. Between you and God, there is no between. Simply God incarnating itself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, the surface of your skin, to the deepest particles, atoms, quantum waves, and particles, all of it. Simply God. As Carl Sagan said, you are the way that the universe knows itself. To which I add, you are the way that the universe loves itself, breathes itself, lives itself, expresses itself. There is only that which it is, simply. And what it is, each of us must be. Because there's only it. So this breath, every breath, the reminder to be anchored to the truth, the reminder to be aligned with truth, the reminder to be an expression of truth, the whole truth, and only that which is truth. You are love. You are power. You are the infinite creative potential expressing itself in full right here and right now. We breathe. And so it is.
We have Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson joining us. If you haven't heard him speak before, you are truly, truly in for a treat. And I don't have any notes in front of me. I just know that you're absolutely wonderful. I think you're coming to us from DC. You correct me if I'm wrong. Let me just turn it over to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's Delaware. So, we're here again, huh? So hello, once again, CSL Leesburg family. It is a pleasure, as always, to be with you. Thank you, Charlene, for coordinating this opportunity, getting me on the schedule. Thank you, Tamara and Larry and Renee, for hosting, producing, and doing all the stuff that you do to make this community be what it is. Now, y'all ready? Are you sure? Okay, so today we are talking about the other in love. How many times have you ever heard someone say something about being in love with someone, being in love with something? You know, like we don't say it this way, like I am in love with Star Wars and Star Trek. And we don't say it that way. We'll say, I love Star Wars or Star Trek. Or I love chocolate. Yes, I am a chocoholic. I love, yes, we will say that. And technically, because love is all there is, when we say we love, then there is the element of being in love. Now, what we tend to do is we categorize and we separate as though it is Tupperware. This means in love. This means to love. I say love, but what I mean is like, etc., etc. But if love is a synonym for God, then God cannot be placed into a Tupperware dish. So on the surface, there's this idea that in spiritual communities all over the place, we are talking about this idea of being in love, the other in love. And yet very often what we do, and we don't even realize we're doing it, what we do is we talk about love, we talk about being in love, we talk about the other in love, etc., from a very superficial place, rather than going deeper with it, making it a real world, relevant, applied practice. So that when we say, love thy neighbor as thyself, or as I often remix it, the self, love thy neighbor as the self, self being God, love thy neighbor as that which is God. In other words, Love your neighbor as you, which is God, loves that which is God, which is that other person. I, God, love you, God. God loves itself. Do we practice love in that way? And remember, as the passage in the Bible continues to say, love thy neighbor as you love thyself. Love thy neighbor as God loves God, with your whole heart, with your entire soul, and all your mind, and with all your strength. Take that in for a second. We'll just do love yourself. Love yourself. How? How much? Love yourself with all your heart. Love yourself with all your soul. Love yourself with all your mind and with all your strength. See, because when we love ourselves to that degree, we can't help but to love everything and everyone. We love so powerfully that we love war into extinction. We love so powerfully that racism and sexism have no soil for the seeds to fall into. We love so powerfully that there is only that which is love, expressing and living and moving and sharing and shaping this entire thing we call life. Because see, it's easy to love another when the other is kind, when they are loving, when they are compassionate, when they're nice, when they smile, when we have common interests. You like Star Wars too. So do I. I love you. You love me. Yes. Wait a minute. Wait. You said Star Trek is better. Oh, how dare you? Star Trek is better. See, it's more difficult to love another when we're not the same. We are different religions, different spiritual practices, different shades, different genders, different. But when we are loving with our whole heart, mind, soul, spirit, strength, all of it, then the differences cannot weaken our love. The differences cannot negate our love. So, well, wait a minute. If because we do this a lot, we do this separation game a lot, is that because we can't help ourselves? Is it because of my biology? See, did I get into that argument with Larry last week? Because you know how Larry is. Star Trek. Is that because of my biology? Or is that because of my mental equivalent? See, it's easy to blame others, to judge others, to criticize others, versus, because even when we talk about punishment, because we have prisons, we have penitentiaries, but we need not punish people. We recognize through the eyes of love, through the hands of love, through the body of love, we recognize and we hold them accountable for what they have done, and we love them into being rehabilitated citizens, rather than locking them away, warehousing them as animals. That's not what love does. Love holds accountable, but love need not punish. And there's a difference there, because it means, yes, you're still going to this place called jail, called the penitentiary, called the prison. You're still going there because what you did was heinous. And yet, because I love, I have to do my best to ensure that you get full resources for the opportunity for you to heal. You may stay there for the rest of your natural life for what you have done. That is holding you accountable. But it does not mean that I surrender my humanity to dehumanize you, even if what you did was dehumanize another. Because this idea of an eye for an eye is what keeps war alive. Eye for an eye is what keeps racism alive. Eye for an eye is what keeps gender biases and fat phobia and all of these things alive, because it's easier to separate, to ostracize, to segregate. But is that what love would do? Is that what being gentle would have us do? Breathe. So I want to ask you about something. Just, think about this for a second. We refer to ourselves as individuals, right? I'm an individual. And when we talk about people who are not dating or they're not married, what do we refer to them as? Single. Are you single? I'm single too. We refer to one another as single. So individuals and single. When I buy a ticket or you buy a ticket just for yourself, it's referred to as a ticket for one. A family is a single unit connected by biology or name or some other connecting factor. And whether it's family of choice or not, there's something that connects as one unit, one family. Even when we're referring to the global family, it is stated in the singular. Humanity is a singular. We don't talk about 5 different humanities on the face of the planet. You know that there are 5 different human species on the planet, and we refer to each individual humanity, like in Star Trek. There's Romulans, there's Klingons, there's people from Earth, etc. We don't refer to there is only humanity, singular. A company such as Apple has many different individualized stores, and yet we refer to the company as one entity. Our human body, it's a body made up of many coordinated, compatible, cooperating pieces and parts that work in unison. You and I, single, that work as one thing. Many planets, many stars, and yet it's one universe. See, we talk about this thing called oneness already. We speak of it in so many ways, but we miss the deeper realization and the deeper practice of oneness. And if we are going to grasp the idea of today's talk, the other in love, then we are invited to understand that the other is simply the one that is individualizing, expressing, and incarnating itself. What do we say in our Declaration of Principles? The very first one. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through and as all of creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. We believe that God manifests itself in, through, and as all creation, but it's not absorbed by it, meaning it's not lessened by the multitude. It's still one. This one manifests as. This one indestructible one. So all of us are demonstrations of it, and we talk about it even when we don't realize we're talking about it. So our invitation is to get more practical and applicable in what does oneness look like, feel like, sound like, smell like, taste like, as I am living, moving, and having my beingness in this world where so many would rather have us fight and harm and ostracize. See, if we were more grounded in the idea of oneness and what oneness means, then all of the discord and dis-ease that separates us, that segregates us, would find itself in the same tar pit with the dinosaurs. No more. It would have gone extinct. So how do we recognize? So there's a passage in the Bible in Genesis where, Cain rose up and killed his brother Abel, and God is like, hey, Cain, where's your brother? This is my remix, the Bible according to Ray. Oh, Cain, where is your brother Abel? I've been looking for him. And clearly I've been looking for him in all the wrong places because I can't find him. To which Cain says, excuse me, am I my brother's keeper? Meaning, am I the one that's supposed to be keeping an eye on him? That's not my job. That's your job, God. Do your job, let me do mine. Now, I always tweak this because I want to remind us that, am I my brother's keeper? Am I my sister's keeper? Am I my gender fluid, gender rich, non-gender conforming, non-binary siblings keeper? No, I am not their keeper. I am them, and they are me. Breathe. Because if I am them and they are me, then the invitation is loving the one, which means loving the we. Loving the we. It's not about, see, New Thought has a lot of rugged individualism embedded in the teaching. It's done unto you as you believe. Well, what about how we believe? No. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, first of all, what if I don't have boots to have bootstraps? But how do we collectively? What did I just say? I said, your consciousness. Do your work. Stop worrying about them. Let them do. Their consciousness is theirs to. That's metaphysical malpractice, right? Like that's the idea that says, blah, 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 blah. Reverend Ray's house is on fire. Tamara, do not dial 911. That's his job. Do not try to be a volunteer firefighter. If he wants the fire out, his consciousness did create it, then his consciousness should put it out. I mean, let him manifest red trucks and fire hose. You see the idea. We compartmentalize and make it about, it's law of attraction, and it's spirituality, and it's yay, team. If God is all there is, then the same practice here should apply to everything, everywhere. That's principle. And yet, well, that's different. No. Because then that implies that God is different in different places, that the law operates differently in different places. And it doesn't. So if we are going to really step into the practice of the other in love, then it means realizing that there is only that which God is, and how I treat myself is how I treat God, how I treat Larry is how I treat God, how I treat Renee is how I treat God, how I treat the person waving the Confederate flag is how I treat God. The person who is running down the street chasing me with a noose, I'm still run. But how am I treating God? Daryl Davis, which I have mentioned, I've probably mentioned him to you before. Daryl Davis, jazz musician who has made it his job to befriend Klansmen, to befriend them. And a sign of the friendship is the Klansmen then relinquish their robes to him. They give them, and he's collect and amassed hundreds of Klan's robes because he is now friends. How does that happen? How does a black man sit down with someone in the Klan, have a conversation that starts off as other, hatred, fear, whatever that is, supremacy, whatever that is, and eventually get to, we're brothers, the other in love? Daryl Davis doesn't just talk about loving his neighbor. He practices it. How do we step into greater levels of? Well, let's talk for a moment about something we do that is the antithesis of blaming. And as Pema Chodron says, we habitually erect a barrier, which we call blame, and that barrier keeps us from communicating genuinely with others. And I would interject, it creates barriers where we don't genuinely communicate with ourselves. We're often not honest with ourselves. But she goes on to say, and we fortify this barrier with all of the concepts of who's right and who's wrong. Who's right and who's wrong? Judgment. And we do that with people, We do that with the people who are closest. We do it with ourselves, don't we? Once again, we do it with ourselves. How often have we said to ourselves, I'm wrong. I'm right about this. And to ourselves, I'm wrong. I'm always wrong. I'm so clumsy. I can't do this. Oh, I could never do that. It's the same thing. We are judging ourselves with this right and wrongness, which means we're going to do it with the people who are closest to us, which means it's going to ripple out, and we do it with our family. We do it with our friends. We do it with the political system. We do it with all kinds of things that we don't like to think about or associate or really dive into and say, what's causing me to do that? What's causing me to create these separations? What's causing me to judge? Okay, so let's get back. So Pema Chodron goes on to say, it is very common, it is a very common and very ancient, well-perfected device that makes us feel better when we other, when we judge, when we blame. We feel better. Blaming others is a way that we have created to protect ourselves. It protects our heart. We're trying to protect this area of ourselves, which is why we don't like being vulnerable. We protect this area of ourselves that is soft, that is open, that is tender. We don't want, so we create these walls. We create these barriers. Versus, what she goes on to say is, rather than going to the place of our pain, we scramble to find some comfortable ground. And oftentimes that comfortable ground involves finger pointing and blaming, creating labels, creating scapegoats. Now, does anyone know where the etymology of, or what is a scapegoat? Because Dwight D. Eisenhower says the search for scapegoats, or the search for a scapegoat, is the easiest of all hunting expeditions. Locating a scapegoat. And historically, a scapegoat was literally a goat that the community would put all of the blame for their sins on the goat and then kill it or send it out into the wilderness. See, scapegoating is the act of unfairly blaming an individual or group, whatever, for any problems or misfortunes. You know, the reason we have hurricanes and global warming is because of them gays. What did, I know you did not just say that the LGBTQ community is creating hurricanes and tornadoes. Scapegoating. And we do it with all kinds of things. Many Christians way back when scapegoated Elvis because of his pelvis thing. And they were like, that's of the devil, and rock and roll, it's scapegoating. And like I said, Pema Chodron said, it is so deeply enmeshed in how are we invited to move through? And if we really want to go to the first individual ever scapegoated would have been Eve. Right? Like, let's think about how deeply that is embedded in our culture and society. Had it not been for Eve and her sin and her scapegoat and her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, there would have been no reason for the Salem witch trials. But the men, the toxic patriarchy, had it in their mind that they are to blame for X, Y, and Z. So once again, if we are going to get into this idea of the other in love, then let us step into the space Dr. Holmes invites us into when he says, compassion and caring are the ties that bind us together in mutual understanding and in the unified attempt to uncover the divinity in each other. Compassion is the most gentle of all human virtues, for it is the outpouring of the divine givingness through all. How often do you show yourself kindness and compassion? How often are you gentle with yourself? Because it starts there. And from there, it ripples out. Dr. Holmes says, love is kind, love is gentle, and love is understanding. Now, he says, love is tolerant of others. And that word doesn't really resonate for me, because love, that would mean, because love accepts. Love envelops. Love embraces others and reaches back through whatever indifferences there are and whatever coldness there is to life. Love reaches to something that is warm, something that is pulsating, something that is at the very center of everything. And when he says at the very center of everything, I want to throw in the reminder that Voltaire said, God is a circle, circumference nowhere, center everywhere. So that which love is, warm and pulsating from the very center of everywhere. Omnipresence. That means right where you are. So how do you not just love, because we can say it. Suppose I said, if I were to challenge Tamara and say, from this point forward, I don't want you to ever say to anyone that you love them. I just want you to show it. Right? So it doesn't matter what we say. Larry, don't tell anyone you love them. Do whatever love would have you do so they feel and know. Because we can say it. But do we show it? Do we live it? Do we embody it? That's the invitation. Breathe. And I want us to be very mindfully aware that there is we say we are not bound by precedent. In other words, Tamara ate the last Reese's peanut butter cup last Saturday. I'm a little perturbed still. It's 7 weeks later. I still want that Reese's peanut butter cup. And she ate it. And I am replaying and re-scarring and re-othering, rejudging. Well, she shouldn't have ate it. When did this happen? December 12th, 1972, Ray. And you still, come with me to the supermarket. I will buy you a bag of Reese's peanut. No, it's the principle of the thing. No, it's not the principle of the thing, because principle would have you be in the present. And principle would say, love Tamara regardless of. Did she know that the Reese's was yours? Did she know that you were saving it for yourself? Did she know? I don't know. And it doesn't matter, but it does. Because what you are doing is creating a narrative and creating a story that is keeping segregation and separation and isolation alive, rather than embracing, rather than gently loving, rather than being the very embodiment of. Because there is no other. Even with the boundaries of states and the boundaries of countries and the borders, the earth knows no such thing as borders. Life itself knows no such thing as separation. See, the moment a doctor operates and takes my heart out and puts it on a table and leaves me, this thing called my body is going to cease. Because the moment you separate, you are creating the atmosphere where life ceases to operate the way it's supposed to. So holding a grudge is like taking your heart out and putting it on a table and trying to go about your business as though it doesn't work that way. In order for that warm and pulsating and gentle power to be, then the heart must be where the heart should be. The lungs must be where the lungs must be. Life must be the way life is. How do we show up that way? Recognizing, as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the time is always right to do what is right. And injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, because we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. We are tied in a single garment of destiny, and whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. The love you have for yourself or don't have for yourself affects me indirectly. The grudge that I hold towards that person affects Larry indirectly. This is our invitation to remove those walls and those barriers and get to a space that says, when I see the other, I see God. And when I love the other, I love God. And just like breath, as I give, I receive. For in someone else's eyes, I am the other. So I use my power, I use prayer, I use meditation, I use spiritual practice to create bridges that connect us. Bridges of circulation. For that is what life is. And there's only one life, and that life is your life now. Breathe. And so it is.